this is a show about exchange traded funds, so I hate to pivot over there to the endlessly discussed Bitcoin ETF topic, but I've got to ask you about it. Where you, and both of you, I think, have said you're going to convert to a Bitcoin ETF. Is that right? Am I right, Greg, on that? You've also said that, correct? Yeah.
Correct.
So give us an update. Give us an update on where you think we stand. We've got a new SEC commissioner. Everyone seems to think that he understands this. I don't know why everyone thinks that he's automatically going to agree to everything, but he certainly does. Gary Gensler, the new SEC commissioner, does understand it. What's your take on the prospects for a Bitcoin ETF this year?
We're hopeful that Gensler's administration there will take a good hard look and put his expertise to work. He taught about a class about crypto at MIT, so the guy knows his stuff. No one's debating that. I think people are sort of reading into it that means that it's going to be green lights for a Bitcoin ETF. We're not so sure that's the case. Of course, we're in front of the administration and, working with law firms, et cetera, as you do, and moving those processes forward. But personally, I think if something happens, it's more likely in 2022. Just really getting going. These things take time. There's multiple years of rulings by the staff that he would need to kind of, figure out how to treat and handle, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not a slam dunk at all, but I do think they will take a good hard look. The thing is, though, to your earlier question, Bitcoin is still a thing very much here at the conference, but there's more to the whole blockchain crypto movement than just Bitcoin, and that's why at Osprey we've launched our Bitcoin Trust OBTC, which is the lowest priced fund that's available on the market. But we've launched other things, Polkadot, Algorand, other cryptocurrencies and layer one platforms that are kind of going to what's next, right? To your point, blockchain is a pretty cool invention, and Bitcoin applies that to the problem of fiat currencies, right? But there are so many other problems, DeFi, decentralized finance, this whole NFT craze, which is a little bit beyond me, but still very interesting. So other platforms like Polkadot, like Algorand, like Ethereum, these are ways that you can get exposure to some of those trends beyond just Bitcoin. We love Bitcoin. I've invested since 2013. But there's more to this movement than just that.
And Michael, just back to that ETF question again. The SEC under the prior administration laid out some, I think, very high barriers here. They were concerned about fraud, about manipulation, about custody issues. And every time this Bitcoin ETF question comes up, I said, read what the SEC said. Now, do you think the industry has cured the defects that the SEC specifically said, here's the problem that we had? What's your thoughts now? Have they addressed the SEC's concern to the point where Gensler can get to a yes?
We've been working on this with the SEC since 2016, and they've been very public. To your point, market surveillance, addressable markets that are regulated. The industry continues to mature with each passing day, but clearly, even though we are maturing, we're still not quite there yet. And so I think for a lot of investors looking at crypto today, they're accessing it through, Grayscale Bitcoin Trust or through Osprey or through others. And it's a compelling opportunity because when GBTC does convert to an ETF, and again, we're 100% committed to converting to an ETF when the regulatory environment is ready to have it, that arbitrage, that discount or that premium would, be arbitraged away and the fund would trade at NAV like all ETFs do. And so a lot of investors are who are interested in Bitcoin are looking at GBTC today for that very reason.
Now Gensler has said publicly, we need more regulation of the exchanges, but he's a little bit unclear about what that is. It's not clear whether he wants more Congress to step in and actually enact some legislation, or whether or not the SEC has the power itself to do more regulation. Where do you stand on that? And Greg, I want to get your thoughts as well.
I think it's important to realize how much regulators are engaged in the industry itself. The types of things that they're looking for are really about regulating the on-ramps and the off-ramps into the ecosystem itself. And so with each passing day, the exchanges are getting more mature, the KYC, the AML that's being done, and this is no longer a barrier to entry for investors. The institutions that now invest with us would not have thought about this, 2-3 years ago, when regulatory uncertainty may have been a hurdle for them. Nowadays, that's not the kind of pushback that we get. And so I think as time goes on, you'll see a maturation around those entry and exit points that will give regulators increased comfort with the asset class.
And KYC, those of you that know your customer, those of you who don't know the nomenclature here, we throw around a lot of acronyms around here. Greg, same question to you. Gensler has specifically said already about manipulation, fraud in custody, and these issues need to be addressed. Do you think, same question, do you think that the industry has matured to the point where they can get Gensler to say yes this year?
I do. I think that they can put some meaningful clarity forward in terms of regulation. From our perspective, one of the biggest issues is really just with each particular coin or token, is this a commodity or is it a security? That's a fundamental question that really dictates how investors can access these products. So for us, that's something we care deeply about. To Michael's point about KYC, which is know your client, and AML, which by the way is anti-money laundering. I feel like those areas have been, well addressed so far. It seems like, at least for U.S. persons. So we'd be looking forward to some clarity around the security versus commodity question, and we've heard talk about perhaps some kind of a grace period for folks to figure it out. But we're definitely eager to see something come from Gensler's administration.
I want to just pivot here and ask you about the digital dollar. I mean, one of the reasons I'm not terribly enthusiastic about Bitcoin is what I want is a digital dollar. I want a way to quickly transfer money to my friend in London, not have to pay an enormous vig if possible. And it would seem a digital dollar, a tethered dollar of some sort, would deal with a lot of those issues. How do you feel about things like a digital dollar, and would that reduce the popularity of Bitcoin and other digital currencies, at least partly? I know there's the crowd out there, the libertarians and the people who are in other countries that are concerned about it, but for a guy like me, would that reduce the interest in Bitcoin?
Not at all. I actually think we take the opposite view. We're definitely seeing not only the digital dollar project underway, but also seeing a lot of other countries around the world getting into launching their own central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. I think that will not displace, or if anything, take or market share or compete with decentralized currencies like Bitcoin. And so I think it all trends towards the digitization of money, and something that investors and just your average person as well, who may not be in the investment market, can glom onto as well.
And do you think, Greg, your thoughts? You feel the same way, I gather.
Yeah. So actually, I'll give you two things. So one is CBDCs is something that Algorand, which we just did a project on, we just launched a trust, is one of the layer ones at the forefront. It was founded by Silvio Macaulay, who's taught at MIT for 40 years. He's a sort of the godfather of cryptography. And they've done a CBDC for the Marshall Islands. So that's a trend that folks can play by looking at Algorand as a token. However, I agree with Michael in the sense that imagine the world's fiat currencies are digitized. I actually think that pushes more people into something like a Bitcoin, because frankly, that would give governments even more control than they already have around their money supply. And a lot of people who get into Bitcoin is for concerns about that type of a control, whether they're libertarian or not. So I do think that both those trends push folks even more towards crypto in general. But there's different ways to play those trends.
Yeah. Where are we with Bitcoin as money? I brought up the whole thing with El Salvador because as a means of payment, well, there it is. If they can get that through, that would be enormous. So, but the other is as a potential store of value. I mean, fiat currencies will work on the blockchain, and any kind of currencies can work off the blockchain. But where are we with cryptocurrencies as money?
In the developed world, the use case at the moment around Bitcoin is not as a payment mechanism. We do have financial services access. We're able to get credit cards, lending. We're able to finance businesses, education, et cetera. So the notion that you may not be buying your cup of coffee with Bitcoin doesn't somehow equal that Bitcoin has somehow failed, right? We are, however, seeing mass adoption in the developing world where there's either lack of financial services access or in folks would rather own other stores of value or other transactional means than their local currency because it's being debased or inflated out of existence. So I think just where we are in the life cycle of this, it's important to realize that Bitcoin here in the developed world is much more being used as a store of value or a digital gold.
Yeah. Greg, same way with you? Store of value rather than a means of payment?
Yeah, for the moment, remains to be seen how that works out over time. There are scaling solutions being applied to Bitcoin, but also to other cryptos like Ethereum. But yeah, I think that Bitcoin's sort of coming into its own as a store of value, which kind of solves half of what it maybe set out to solve. But the payments one remains outstanding, and that problem is still waiting to be solved by somebody.
One of the problems, of course, people have had who don't want to invest in Bitcoin is what else is there to invest in? We had this problem with ETFs in general because they go along with whatever's popular. The pot stocks had this problem years ago. There's nothing to buy. And then we had Coinbase come along. The Coinbase IPO was, I think, a pretty big event.
It was.
Barry Silbert, who works with you, runs Digital Currency Group, you're affiliated with him, said it would result in the repricing of many companies in the space and would accelerate M&A. I wonder, has it fulfilled that kind of promise? I mean, the reference price was $250. It's $230 right now.
Sure.
I notice. I mean, I know reference prices don't necessarily mean a lot, but it has been on a slowly downward trajectory since then.
It's too early to see some of that play out. I think Barry's spot on that we will see increased M&A activity. The Coinbase IPO was a watershed moment for the industry, something that we've all been really excited about. And it also gives investors the opportunity for the first time to actually participate in value creation of a company that's actually building the rails or the picks and shovels of the industry, as opposed to historically only being able to invest in crypto itself. So I do think it is a new opportunity for a lot of investors, and it will cause other companies to come to the public markets as well from the broadly defined digital currency realm.
And Greg, does it mean anything, just to repeat the question, that the reference price was $250 on Coinbase, it's now $230, essentially?
No, I don't read anything whatsoever into that. I think that it's probably likely trading in line with the price of Bitcoin generally. But I think Coinbase has a huge future ahead of it. Obviously, big splash in their IPO or whatever you call it, direct offering. But more to come. I agree with Michael.
So you think 1 year from now, are you in the prediction business? Want to guess where Bitcoin's going to be 1 year from now? I know people ask this question. I'm sorry. I know none of you guys like to deal with that question. But where are we going to be 1 year from now?
I have to say, from my view of the world, I am as encouraged as I've ever been by who's participating in the ecosystem and the extent to which they're participating in the asset class. And so what that ultimately means for the price, remains to be seen. But I think the institutionalization of this asset class has arrived, and it's here to stay.
You think it'll be higher than a year from now?
I think it's tough to predict. I mean, we've seen crypto go through quite a few series of bubbles and bursts over time, and each time the industry gets challenged, prices get challenged, it comes back more resilient than ever. So your guess is as good as mine.
Greg, final word from you.
We think it's going to be higher, my friend. It is, still in a bull market in my view. It's range bound here. I would say it breaks decisively upward through 40,000. Then it's going to keep going. If it breaks to the downside, we could be in for some trouble. My view is that it's bullish, but we take the mid to long-term view anyway. So this represents a good buying opportunity in my book.